Hey, what's up? Today we're going to do something a little bit different and spend some time with one of my favorite time killers, Reddit. Specifically, we're going to go over the Unity 3D subreddit, answer a couple of questions, and show you something really cool that you may not have seen that's in the latest Unity version that popped up on here. Now, if you haven't looked at Reddit, there's a lot of garbage on there, to be honest, a lot of useless nonsense, but there's also some really cool subreddits like the Unity 3D ones, the Unity 2D subreddit, and the GameDev subreddit. There's a programming subreddit also, and these are just great places to ask questions, get answers, and see what's new and what's kind of going on, what people are working on, and what they're showing off, and get some cool inspiration. So today I want to answer some questions, see what else we can do, and have a little bit of fun. But before we move on, this video is sponsored by Backtrace. Playtesting is one of the most crucial parts of building a game to ensure a good player experience, but it's almost impossible to manually catch all of the problems and errors that will, without a doubt, occur when building a game. Backtrace offers a completely free solution that'll ensure all of these errors and bugs are caught before your release date and ensure the best possible user experience. Their plugin supports all game engines, languages, and deployment platforms and lets you catch errors in all instances of your games. It generates structured, searchable error reports from your data, which makes it easy to monitor, analyze, and debug errors across all platforms. I've been using Backtrace myself, and their easy-to-use web console is great. I even made a full video on how to integrate their software into your workflow that I definitely recommend you go check out. Their developer plan is completely free and lets you manage up to 25,000 monthly errors with 10 gigs of free storage. So get started optimizing your debugging workflow completely free by simply clicking the link in the description. So let's get started. This is the main subreddit in the default view. It shows it the hot stuff first, and then there's an option for new and top. If you look through hot, you see there's usually lots of cool stuff in the show off sections where people are kind of showing off what it is they're working on, what they're building. And see these, like somebody's got a cool sailing game, just showing off the visuals and graphics here. Everybody will do that. They'll show off some neat little gameplay effects. Even seen some games get previewed here long before they come out. But then if I want to find questions, which is kind of what I wanted to look for, I'll just go to the new section. It's usually where there's a lot of questions that haven't been answered yet. So let's see. Got a couple of questions here. The first one's about ChatGPT. And I think I'm going to skip that because I actually just recorded a full video on ChatGPT about an hour ago that I'll link in the description if it's out. If not, make sure that you're subscribed and you'll see it when it comes out. I'm going to move on to the next question down here. So how do you give TextMesh Pro its own custom material? That one I'm not really sure. Is there a more efficient way to do this? Let's expand it out. Okay, so here we've got an animator system or an animator controller that they've set up with an entry point that goes into an idle and a bunch of transitions in between a bunch of different states. So there definitely is a more efficient way to do this. The first thing that you're going to want to look at here is a blend tree. For these animations that you've got here, like walk left, walk right, idle, jump, probably you're running, and a couple other ones, you're going to want to set up a blend tree that will blend between these different animations so that you can get some smoothness and also have a lot less of this mess. When it comes to actually swapping out the animations, you've got a couple different options here. You can... Ew, this is kind of a mess. Looking at all of the different things here. So you want to set up a couple different blend trees and a couple sub-state machines is what I'm thinking here to clean this up quite a bit. You've got a drill. I'm not sure what that is. I assume it's a totally different mode. That'd probably be a separate state machine instead of using the same one, or a separate sub-state. You have a swimming one. That would probably also be its own separate sub-state machine. When you're in the water, you're not jumping, you're not doing any of these other things. It should be totally unrelated. And then the hill walking and all that stuff could be parameters or some blending there. So there are definitely more efficient ways to do this. The first thing you should look at are blend trees though, and state machines or sub-state machines. Let's go down to something a little bit more complicated. How about how can I make a melee combat system in VR, Unity 3D, #Unity. This is a very generic question. Sounds like a fun one though. So they said they've been trying to make a sword combat game like Blades and Sorcery, but there's no tutorial. That I find hard to believe. There probably are some tutorials out there that show how to make a fighting game. You probably just have a hard time finding them, and they're probably relatively old because they probably came out when a lot of the VR headsets came out. But in general, if you want to make a VR melee game, the main thing that you've got to do is have some object that's tracking with your controller, like your sword or your weapon, and have it move around. And usually my trick that I like to do is have another object that's following it, have the actual collider for that object be following that sword so that it's chasing after my sword. It's not exactly aligned with it, but it's aligned within, a couple frames or so, and it catches up really quickly. Then the objects just work as normal physics objects, hit and smack stuff. Now when it comes to actually like being able to push and hit shields and stuff and all that blocking, it gets a lot more complicated. But I think if you just get down to the object following and trying to follow and pushing forces, it give you the biggest, I guess, the starting point, and be able to kind of jump off and do that. Also look at I did a tutorial on baseball games, how to do baseball batting kind of like this, and I think you can kind of modify that a little bit into a combat system. Again, you should also be able to find some really good tutorials out there if you just do a little bit of searching on all the VR developers on YouTube. Before I do the next question on here, I wanted to show something that I saw pop up and I thought was really cool. I've talked about this a little bit before, but I don't know if everybody's seen it. So one of the main things I like about looking at Reddit is seeing all of the cool new features and things that are coming out, like this LOD crossfading. If you haven't seen this already, I've done a couple videos talking about it, and we talked to the URP team about it, but essentially makes it so that your LODs don't pop. So you just get that automatic fading, a lot like Nanite, not exactly like Nanite, but similar type of thing where you're getting that automatic fading of your LODs instead of having to manage it yourself or seeing any cool popping. I thought that was really neat, and I did a full video on the tech stream. I'll link that down below if you want to see that and some other cool features that are in the new version of Unity. But if you're not interested in just watching videos on it, make sure that you also hop onto the subreddit and you see this kind of stuff here as well. Of course, you're interested in watching videos on it, though, because you're watching this. So make sure that you go watch that, check it out, subscribe, and all that stuff. The hardest part about this is finding questions that aren't already answered, because everybody just hops in and answers the questions really fast. So I'm just going to go through a couple of them really quick. There was one on here. Can I make low poly games on a 4 gig RAM system with a Core i5 and Intel HD graphics? Definitely you can. I wouldn't recommend it. I would go up to 8 gigs. I did a video on this recently, but I would recommend getting 8 gigs if you can, but you certainly can develop a low poly game on this kind of setup. You just have to make sure that the textures and everything aren't huge as well, because there's low poly and then there's also the texture quality or the texture size. So you can have something be low poly, still have crazy high texture quality. So just make sure that you're keeping everything inside the small RAM limitations, although it's really difficult to run Windows in 4 gigs of RAM. So I'd recommend go higher, but yes, you can. Here's another one that doesn't look like it has a perfect answer. It says they've got their Unity application stuck on the update scene when they try to load it, and removing the library folder didn't seem to fix it. I would also try removing the temporary folder. There's a library and a temp folder. Whenever anything goes wrong, you want to just delete both of those, clear them out, and see if that fixes the issue. Also, if that doesn't fix it, try duplicating your scene file. Just copy it in the Explorer in Windows, and then open up that other scene, the new duplicated scene. Sometimes I've seen the references get messed up and things break. That might not fix it all. There might be something else going on in there, but that's what I would give a try. Oh, here's another unanswered noob question. How do I trigger an animation by event? So they want to walk into a cube that's marked as a trigger. They know that much, at least. It's got is triggered, and they want it to play an animation. They say it doesn't play anything. So what you'd want to do in that case is set up a cube, make it so that it is a trigger and has a script on it that's listening for on trigger enter. On trigger enter, you're going to want to get the animator component of the thing that's entering and then set a trigger on that. You'll want to set a maybe play animation trigger, or you could set a Boolean or some other parameter that's going to fire off that animation. Usually you'll set a trigger that just causes the animation to play one time. Sometimes though you might want to set a bool that switches it into something like a swimming state or a floating state if the animation is supposed to be completely different the entire time they're in the cube instead of just playing it once. Also, don't forget to check out Backtrace. Start automating and debugging your crash analysis workflow for free by simply clicking the link in the description.